Hi, gang. You're just in time for Cheap Comic Collector. This is episode number 182. 182. And I am your host, Rob. And today we're doing another What Am I Reading episode. First off, we have Pep Comics from 1977, number 277. And one of the interesting things, there's something that I find interesting because I never see it mentioned, is that the Archie comics and also the Dennis the Menace comics from around this time were distributed by Fawcett. Now, Fawcett hadn't published comic books in years. I'm not sure if that's the same Fawcett that was the comic publisher. I assume it is, but I've never seen that discussed anywhere in anything that I've ever read. And of course, Archie Comics were their own publishing company. And then, let's see, Dennis the Menace was published by, I think it was Halden, something like that. But they were distributed by Fawcett, according to a lot of the covers. So, I don't know, thought that was interesting that Fawcett, it was actually still around, even though they stopped publishing a long time ago for basically... But anyway, we got Pep Comics here, typical Archie Comics issue. The first story was kind of interesting. It's got a con man in town that's convincing everybody that the dismal swamp outside of Riverdale has oil in it. And so everybody in town's trying to get in on this oil deal. And Archie realizes there's a con going on, and when he goes out to the swamp, his car gets stuck and starts leaking oil. So the con man thinks there's oil in the swamp and buys back all the property. And then the townspeople are grateful, so they buy Archie a new crankcase for his jalopy. And so that was kind of cute. Short little story, but fun. Then there's a one-page gag where the Jughead doesn't want to go skiing until he finds out they're taking along a snack wagon. And this story here is says it's a Jughead story, but it's really more of an Archie story. Jughead starts out with Jughead looking for Archie. Chuck Clayton basically lies to Jughead about where Archie is, because Archie's hiding from Jughead. He doesn't want him to borrow any money because he wants to save his money for a date. So he avoids Jughead for a while. And then it turns out, of course, that that's not why Jughead is looking for him. And Jughead's got a bunch of money because he's got a job, and so he treats them to a drive-in. And here we go. 8-track tapes, buddy. Any 11 8-track tapes for $1.97. Oh, Columbia House. Wonder if they ever made any money. And then we got a little Jinx story, which is almost an educational feature because it teaches what an asterisk is. And then there's a Pen Pals page where you can write to all these people. Got addresses and names and ages, and I didn't recognize any names on there, but you never know when somebody will show up that we all know. So Archie's Club News membership is only 25 cents. And then there's another Archie story where he's trying to sneak out of class to go get a soda. And he's developed a plan over 2 weeks of how to avoid Mr. Weatherby and get out of school. Jughead goes with him. And it's a study period, so they make sure that they're not cutting an actual class. And but then when they get to the soda shop, Mr. Weatherby's standing there waiting for him. So, and that was at the end of that issue. It was a little bit better. I tend to like the older Archie stories a little bit better than the more modern ones. I definitely don't like the one-page joke issues as you saw the last time, but this was pretty good. It had some stories to it, so it's pretty good. Then we had New Teen Titans number 49 from 1988. So this would have been this would have been the second Baxter series, and I hadn't read this one before. This was later in their run after, and I wasn't. I didn't have comic shops available to me, so once they went to the Baxter series, I pretty much had to stop reading them. This one's written by Marv Wolfman, and it was during the period where Eduardo Barreto was the penciler, Romeo Tanghal is the inker, and Red Star, the Russian Red Star, who is this guy who was originally named Starfire, has kidnapped Starfire along with Hammer and Sickle. So basically the Russians have kidnapped Starfire. Cyborg is hitching a ride on the back of their van to try and stop them. A lot of fighting in this issue for a Titans story, from what I remember. But it seems like it was kind of a fill-in issue storyline, kind of. And so Red Star's still a hero. He's just a Russian, so he's following his country, what he thinks is his country's orders to kidnap Starfire. But the Hammer and Sickle are actually acting as rogue agents for a faction in the Russian government, and they're supposed to actually kill Red Star and discredit him as a traitor. So the fighting goes on. Cyborg basically and Starfire escape. Red Star gets in a fight with Hammer and Sickle, and then the Titans are meeting about what to do about it, and Red Star comes waltzing in and basically telling them that he was fooled. He found out that the orders he was following weren't true orders from his commander, and so he teams up with the Titans to stop Hammer and Sickle. And that's pretty much the end. Like I said, it's just pretty much a straightforward fighting issue. No real subplots in there. Nothing really going on. Red Star goes off on his own. He's no longer allowed in his country. They think he's a traitor, and it leads. The next issue is number 50 with George Perez coming back and to the title. And so it was pretty good. It was okay. It wasn't really what I expected from New Teen Titans. They were so good when they first started, but it was good. It was okay. And from 1975, we have an issue of Bugs Bunny, number 164. On the cover, Bugs is cheating in a turtle race with Elmer Fudd. He's got his turtle's on a roller skate, so he just gives him a shove across the finish line there. And this was kind of a strange issue for Bugs Bunny, I thought. It was funny. I found it quite funny. Wasn't just silly. And but this first one's called Kissin' Cousins, the first story, and the Bugs mistakenly believes that Elmer Fudd is getting married when it's actually his cousin that's getting married. So after a few mishaps, and apparently this is a friend of Bugs that I've never seen before. See what his name was here. His name was... Maybe they didn't mention. Clovis. His name was Clovis. And I believe he's supposed to be a cat. And he looks a little bit like Laurel, Stan Laurel from Laurel and Hardy. It's just his expression here with the way his face looks and the hat. Um, and that's pretty much all I know about him. He's just there. I don't know if he's a continuing character or not. But anyway, Bugs tries to get enough money to get a gift for Elmer Fudd's wedding, and he goes on a game show, and there's different gags and jokes involved throughout that are pretty cute. And then Bugs thinks she's two-timing Elmer and just gonna marry him for his money, and so he dresses up as a bride and goes in and tries to stop the wedding, mistakenly still believing that she's marrying Elmer. And it all gets settled in the end, and they tie Bugs up in a chair, and that's the end of the story. But it was pretty good. It was actually had some plot to it, and it was pretty funny. There's a text story, one-page text story. It looks like it's got Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig in it. And you got all those groovy patches from the 70s ads. And then the second story was a little bit interesting too. First of all, it starts off with them going into the Play Bunny Club, which is obviously a takeoff on the Playboy Club, which seems a little inappropriate for a Bugs Bunny comic book. Maybe not so much a Bugs Bunny cartoon, since they're made for adults, basically, as well as kids. But for a comic book, it seems like, especially in the 70s, it was maybe a little bit inappropriate. But it's interesting. They're made for an interesting. So they don't actually go in the club either, by the way. They stop a robber coming out. And this is, but I forget if this is Bugs's uncle or just a friend or whatever. His name's Horatio, and he's actually a parody of W.C. Fields. He talks like W.C. Fields and so forth. And that makes me also believe that this cat in the first story is supposed to be a takeoff on Stan Laurel, because that just added to me convincing myself that was what it was intended. So anyway, Horatio catches this bank robber by tripping him accidentally, but there's he's the little brother of a famous bank robber, and so he's convinced that the bigger brother is going to come after him. And so he tries a couple different things to get thrown in jail that don't work. He actually stops another bank robbery, and this is the bigger bank robber's little sister. And then he finally gets arrested for littering after trying to get arrested. And but the real bad guy that he's scared of is actually happy that his siblings got caught, because they're terrible crooks, and he doesn't want them going down that path. So a couple funny lines in here. The jails aren't safe, they're filled with criminals, stuff like that. That's pretty funny. And then the last story wasn't that great. It was interesting, but it's got the I don't know, his name's Buzzard or something like that, and his mother is telling him that he has to eat Bugs Bunny. He's supposed to invite Bugs to dinner so that they can eat him. Meanwhile, a hunter is trying to capture both Bugs Bunny and the Buzzard. And it goes on. It's got a little bit of a plot to it. It's just not as funny as the other stories. And so, all in all, not bad. Not a bad issue at all of Bugs Bunny, because usually they're kind of lame. The funny animal adventure stories are my favorites. The stories from the 40s and the 50s where they're actually on adventures. Treasure hunts like Uncle Scrooge and ghosts and all kinds of different stuff like that. Those are actually, to me, the best funny animal comics. The ones that are played just for humor, sometimes they're a little bit humorous like this, but that's about as good as they get. So And then next up, we have the Spectre number 5 from 93. Now, I actually pulled this one out of one of the boxes because I had a request from someone that wanted me to review this series. The problem is I only have 2 issues. I have number 1 and number 5. And they wanted me specifically to look at like issue number 39 or something, which I don't have. And number 1 was not readily available. I told him I would review number 1, but it is somewhere. It wasn't in my boxes of unread stuff, so it's probably in the boxes of read stuff, which means it's not really sorted. It's in somewhere in a decades box mixed in with everything else. So it wasn't readily for me to put my hands on, so I decided to do number 5 instead. And he's right, it's a pretty creepy cover. And the series is by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake. And it is good. This was a great issue. I am so glad, because this is normally it's not something I would pick up or read. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, which happens to me a lot. A lot of the times the comics I'm looking forward to are just, they're okay. And then the comics that I don't think I'm going to like, I end up loving. So this is one of those. This was a pretty spooky story it's not a mature title. It's just written very, very, very well. And the art's kind of creepy. So it starts off with this. There's actually, you have to interpret it a little bit, but it explains it as it goes on. There's a little boy buried alive with an air pipe going out. So he's in a cemetery. That's why these dead bodies are in here. And he's asking for his mommy. And these guys are the kidnappers. They're being chased by the cops because they were speeding. They get in an accident and they die. And it turns out they're the only ones who know where the kid is buried alive because they were supposed to be picking up ransom money. So the detectives get involved, and the mother is basically saying, you can't help me in this. You have a way of reaching the dead. And then Jim Corrigan appears, the Spectre, and he basically appears and the one detective, Amy's, basically says, Jim, I was just thinking about you. And he's like, I know. And he's just there. And so he asks her to stay there to be his anchor for when he comes back from the land of the dead. So he goes into this guy's mind, even though he's dead. And he ends up in the afterlife. There's a brief cameo of Dead Man right there with all these dead souls that are apparently going to hell because that's where they end up. So creepy art, creepy story, and very well written. So Spectre's in hell looking for this guy's soul. He talks to, I guess, what is Jim Corrigan's father, probably, is the way it sounds for a brief second. And then he calls out Shathan, the Eternal, which is basically a demon with a takeoff on the name Satan, obviously. Shathan. And so they battle a little bit. Spectre wins. He gets the soul. And he's carrying the guy out of hell. And the guy tells him where the boy is buried. So he throws him back into hell because that's where he belongs. And then he basically animates the guy's corpse and tells them where to find the kid. And then Amy helps him come back out of the corpse. And the father and the detective and the cops are able to save the kid just in time because it's actually raining and his chamber that he was in is filling up with water through the pipe that was supposed to be providing him with air. So all's well that ends well. It ends with one of the detectives wondering what the hell is going on. for obvious reasons. So really, really, really good story. Great writing, great art, creepy writing. A nice standalone story. It wasn't like a continuing saga where you have to read 20 issues to understand what's going on. Just fantastic issue. Really, really like this one. So, so yeah, obviously that's my favorite this go round. Let's see, what else did we have after that? Probably Bugs Bunny after that, and then Titans, and then Pep. So just in order. Yep. So Archie's story is more than likely, unless there's an adventure story in there, it's probably always going to be last on my list. And the titles just aren't really my cup of tea most of the time. But thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Tomorrow we'll be looking at some comics I got off of eBay. So we'll be looking at some older stuff, and it should be fun. Hope to see you tomorrow. And as always, the video will debut at noon, and I hope to see you there. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.